Hi, Mass.
Hi, Chatushka. How's it going?
How are you? Good, good.
Good,
How are
good.
you?
All right, all right.
Pleasure connecting with you once again.
Yes, yes. Lovely to connect again, Manai.
So I'm just waiting until I get a cue from our host that they've synchronized it with Facebook Live, and then we should be okay to kickstart. Currently, it's being set up.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, we're good to go. So a very good evening to all our viewers. We have an exciting new IG Live series, Tech Times, brought to you by UCL Sri Lanka, which is affiliated to the University of Central Lancashire, in collaboration with Chocolate. So we have a quick opening commercial by our sponsor before we kickstart the first episode. We'll just tune in for that.
What I'm about to tell you could change your entire life. This is a place where you meet the world. A place that will inspire, challenge, and shape you. We stand on a path to discovering some of the greatest adventures of your life. It's a place where you learn how to be the best and sit back in awe as the people you meet inspire you to spread your wings, to reach higher, go further, laugh louder, and launch yourself with the right start into an extraordinary future which will take you places. Start your journey to a world of possibilities at UCL.
So that was our sponsor, UCL. Thank you for making this series available for all our viewers tuned in. So given the prevailing situation under the new normal, tech careers are booming, and this series is about featuring elite and eminent personalities and professionals from the tech field, where they share their experiences so that the youth could explore opportunities which are available so that they could step in to a tech-based career of their choice. So we are honored to feature our special guest, Mr. Mass Savanghan, in the first edition, who's currently functioning as the Global Training and Development Head of Attune. So a very good evening, Mass. Thank you for joining this discussion. We are very much honored and privileged to have you on board.
Thank you, Chatushka, and thank you, Chocolate Magazine, for the invitation to be a part of this discussion. I'm very humbled and privileged to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. So, Mas, firstly, before we get into the formal round of questions, how has the last couple of weeks or months been? I mean, giving consideration to what is taking place, unfortunately, there is an emergence of a third wave, and we've been told it's a new strain and it's highly transmissible. There have been many advisories that have been issued by the government regulators as well. How have you navigated during these trying times from a personal-based perspective as well as a professional perspective? Has technology acted as an enabler?
Right. So thank you for the question, Chatushka. So let me just answer that. So it's been a little over a year that we've been under lockdown, and I know a lot of IT and tech companies in Sri Lanka and across the world have been working remotely. And this, I know, wasn't the ideal situation, but a lot of people didn't have a choice. We worked remotely, and we had to use certain enablers for us to connect with our customers, our stakeholders, the business, and we've sort of adapted to it right now. And we're seeing a lot of companies as well. I mean, even before the third wave, commit to say, listen, it looks like we're going to be doing this until the end of the year. This looks like the better normal, and this is the way we're going to do it. So along with that came a lot of challenges, a lot of sort of rearrangement from an HR perspective, trying to get our organization ready for this sort of change. We needed to ensure that all our systems and processes and policies were aligned to the whole work at home situation and scenario. How do we keep people engaged and motivated? How do we keep them empowered? So a lot of things came up. But what is really interesting to note that, if you speak to a lot of people, especially, about the COVID situation, and you get two different types of interpretations or views. Some people say, listen, it's been the worst time ever for me. I really don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I don't really know, if I can hold out much longer. And a lot of people are saying, listen, I'm going to wait until this whole storm blows over. But when you speak to a different set of people, they're like, listen, this is the greatest time of our lives. I mean, you often only make change when you're inspired enough or you're desperate enough. And right now we're desperate enough, and we need to look at different ways of acquiring new income. We need to look at different ways of reskilling ourselves to match, current demands in the market. And that's what it's all about, especially in the tech industry, right? How do you stay relevant to the current trends that are out there? And I think that is so important. And that's a message that I'm going to resonate throughout the whole session today. Are you relevant, and how do you make yourself relevant? So yeah, Chatushka, I hope that sort of answered your question.
That's a very insightful perspective shared there, Mass. Thank you. So to the audience tuned in, a brief introduction of Mass. Mass currently is the head of the Global Training and Development Function at Attune. He holds more than 18 years of experience in human resources and talent management, and holds an MBA in HR as well as project management. He's currently a MBA lecturer at the University of West of England. He has undergone executive education by the University of Kentucky, and he is a certified life coach as well. He is an enthusiastic sportsman, a long distance runner, and has represented the Arabian Gulf in rugby union. So he has conducted many workshops and seminars for distinguished corporates in the lines of personal branding, building relationships, and mentoring, and personal effectiveness. So a very impressive profile. Again, welcome on board. Thank you for accepting our invite to join this discussion. So Mass, my first question to you is, take us through your professional career and some of the experiences, some of the highlights that you have obtained throughout the years, the different positions that you held, and some of the responsibilities that you have undertaken. In very brief, in a nutshell,
Sure.
Just elaborate,
Sure.
That would be great.
Sure. So I think you actually touched upon a lot of that. I've always been an HR professional. I applied my trade in manufacturing for the best part of my career, and then I moved into IT and technology consulting specifically. Right now, I play a global learning and development role. And what I can say from my experience is the world is changing quite rapidly. And not only in technology, even in my field. Something that you would have learned and started your career with may not be applicable, or may have been modified or enhanced, by the time in about 5 or 10 years, right? So nothing is static, everything is evolving. Like Chatushka mentioned, something that I spend a lot of time doing apart from my work is I'm a sports enthusiast. I like running long distances. So you'd probably find me anywhere on the roads early morning in Colombo doing anywhere between 15 to 20 to 40 kilometers, maybe a little less these days because of COVID. But the reason I do all these things is really important as individuals to, one thing, make sure that you're healthy and fit, build immunity. And on the other side, also build an endurance mindset. And what the endurance mindset means is, are you able to take challenges? Are you able to, pick yourself up whenever life puts you down on the mat? And I think, COVID-19 last year showed us that. I mean, when we thought everything was going really smoothly, we had a plan, and then suddenly overnight, we were in lockdown and we were kind of stuck. But if you have that endurance mindset, you don't see this as an obstacle. You see this as something that, can be overcome, as long as, you have the mindset to overcome it. And then that's something that running helps me do, because say, for example, if I'm running a half marathon, the first 15 kilometers is physical. After that, it's a mental block where your body gives you all these different excuses for you to stop. Because, our mind has been around for about 2 million years, right? As humans, and we're built to survive, not to succeed. So, after 15 kilometers, you are given every single excuse to give up. And, the sort of pressure you need to put on yourself and override your inner voice is incredible, and that is building an endurance mindset. And you can actually carry that into a lot of segments in your life and ensure that, whenever a challenge comes your way, you do have that mental ability to back yourself up and be a rising phoenix, as you put it in a different way. So yeah, Chatishka.
Very interesting perspective that you touched on, and thank you for elaborating in terms of sports as well. I mean, the extracurricular sporting activities that you do, as well as how it has supported you in your professional career as well. Now moving on to skills, Mas. So skills today, as you rightly said, the world is evolving, and we need to stay relevant. So the skills today could be redundant or irrelevant in the near future. From your perspective, what would be some of the skills that would be in demand, let's say in the next 5 or 10 years, by 2025 or by 2030? And also, if you could just elaborate and give some examples of some of the skills development initiatives that has been undertaken by you as a corporate in terms of upskilling the talent resources.
Sure. So what I can give you is probably a forecast of where I see tech and a lot of industries moving towards. So, there has been emergence of this whole Uber culture and the Uber generation. So what we're foreseeing, and a lot of HR folk are actually seeing this, where a lot of companies are actually moving into that sort of Uber structure, where, you spend a lot less on infrastructure. You take in less permanent employees into your cadre. You have a less overheads, and you're looking to actually employ people who are there as freelancers or contractors, right? And why this is so important, and we've seen this trend actually emerge a lot in Europe and the US, where a lot of companies don't want to invest in that infrastructure. And that's very typical if you look at companies like Uber, Airbnb, where, they don't have the infrastructure. Because what happens is when things get difficult and, when there's an economic collapse, you have so many people employed under you, and what are you going to do with them, right? So they rather, spend less on infrastructure and adopt models where people are, coming in as contractors and as freelancers. Now, when you do this, right, you spend less on training. Why? Because you hire people for the skill that you need for the current context of your business, and when you're done with it, you hire someone else for the next, sort of business venture or the next business initiative that you have. Right? You're hiring people for one specific area that you want, and when you don't need that anymore, you hire the person that you want. Right? So now that is happening, and we're seeing this a lot in Europe and the US, especially, where you hire someone for that skill. You don't have to invest in training. When your technology moves or migrates into something new, you hire someone with that new skill, right? So there's no investment on training. But what happens there is there's a lot of pressure on the individual. And employees like this as well. I mean, people like this. Why? Because you can work somewhere in the morning, you can work somewhere in the evening, and you're not tied down to a 9-to-5 job, right? You can be very flexible in your approach. But what happens is you need to ensure that you are skilled enough so that people will actually want to contract you, and you are relevant in terms of your skill set. Because if you're not relevant, like any product or service, you might not be purchased, or you might not be given a contract. So with companies investing less on training, and this is something we foresee in the future, what are you doing as an individual to make sure that you are relevant and current in whatever technology or whatever area that you want to create a career out of? So that is the forecast that I personally see, and a lot of people also are sort of looking at that as well. Of course, there are a lot of process, a lot of things that need to be worked out. Like, if you work in 2 or 3 companies, how do they manage information security, stuff like that. But these are things that will be worked out over the next 2 to 3 years. But we're seeing a lot of people, wanting that flexibility. They don't want company loyalty. They want to work at different places. They want to be flexible in the way they earn money. And that whole Uber generation thing is, gathering momentum. What us as a company, what we do is, we try and fill the deltas. What happened? I mean, we still haven't reached that Uber generation or that Uber industry as yet. But right now what we do is we understand that technology is changing at light speed. And it's really important that, if we hire somebody with a technological, expertise, that may be irrelevant after 1 or 2 years or maybe 5 years. And we need to ensure that we train them on the deltas of what's really new. What are the enhancements? What are the modifications? What's really happening, right? What are the disruptive technologies around this core area? So we train people a lot on the deltas to ensure that they are in line and relevant. On the other side, a lot of investment is also put on professional and soft skills, which we see, is more important these days, working in a global village. But yeah, I mean, this is something that we do, and this is what I foresee personally in the future, and something that I believe a lot of people need to take seriously, because you need to be empowered as an undergraduate, as a recruit, as an employee, because if you are not empowered and you don't upskill yourself, you might be left behind.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mas. In terms of my next question, I'd like to leverage on the answer provided in terms of there could be less investments that will be undertaken in terms of training and developments where individuals need to be empowered to upskill themselves. How important is time management and self-development? Because we see today's generation where, I mean, they do a 9 to 5, they do a white-collar job, they do a corporate job, and they become complacent. So what advice could you give for a shift in mindset for them to go the extra mile? Because we see that, they go for a 9 to 5, and after that, there might be little efforts made for self-development. What advice can you share based on your experience?
That's a really great question, Chachushka. And just to answer that, I think it's really important to understand, right? Now, if you are working in a company, and I see this in so many people, right? They normally wait until a company invests in them in terms of their development. I requested for a training program this year. I wanted to get professional skills. I wanted to get technical skills. I wanted to get leadership skills. And unfortunately, the company didn't give me that training. And as a result, I couldn't complete my development plan. That's a very typical narrative that we often hear. I couldn't develop myself this year because nobody spent on me. But I think really important looking at the world going forward, where everybody needs to take responsibility over their own development. Don't wait for the company or anybody else to invest on you. Because what happens is, like I mentioned in the previous question, unless you are relevant and current in your area of expertise, you will be left behind, right? And I know, a lot of people say, yeah, but that's the company's responsibility. They need to invest in me. Well, the companies will invest on something that's important to them, right? They will want to align you with their objective so that they can meet their targets. Right? So you might have a totally different career aspiration or something similar, but might be a little different at the same time. So it's up to everyone, right, to be very focused on their personal development. I know we work 9 to 5 jobs. Some of us work on shifts. Some of us have flexible working arrangements. That's fine. But how much of effort, how much of investment are we putting on our own development? I mean, personally, I feel that every single person needs to at least invest in 2 or 3 programs per year to learn something new, to be current, to learn maybe a new skill even. It could be either professional, leadership, technical, whatever it may be. But unless you're willing, right? And it's nothing extra that you have to do. This is bare minimum. If you want to be current, if you want to grow up the corporate ladder, if you want to, to actually make a difference where you're working, that personal development piece is so important. And unfortunately, I don't see so many people investing in that for whatever reason. And I think this is something that really needs to be taken seriously as well, where personal development needs to happen. You need to be empowered. You need to take responsibility over your career. Now, like I said, right, so many people last year when COVID-19 hit said, I'm going to wait and weather the storm, right? I'm going to see what happens at the end of the year. But a lot of people also said, no, I need to reskill myself. I need to understand what the current market is looking for, and I need to know what I can do. And these people were actually quite successful. I mean, a lot of people made more money than they've ever made last year. But a lot of other people were like deer stuck in the headlights who were really static and didn't make any progress. So it's up to everybody, right? Don't blame COVID, don't blame your company, don't blame the weather. you take responsibility over your own life and your own career, and you'll see the improvements and the development happening automatically.
That's a very inspiring perspective that you shared, Mas. You were very open and honest. That's what I think the audience wants, and that's what everyone needs to hear as well. Thank you for sharing that. So, in terms of moving on to my next question, in terms of resources available, I understand there are many online courses that are available for students. I mean, I myself personally, I enrolled myself in some of the online courses as well. If you could enlighten the audience in terms of resources that they could utilize based on your experience to sharpen their individual tech skills, could you name a few?
Sure, Chatushka. So let me just start off with a quote, right? They say right now we are drowning in information, but we are overloaded with information, but starving for wisdom, right? Right now, anything that you want to learn, anything that you want to know is available on the internet, right? Even in terms of courses where you actually had to physically go in person to a university or an educational institute, you can get these courses now online at a much cheaper price as well, right? You have Coursera, you have Udemy, you have a number of different certified bodies who will actually provide you with training that you want. A lot of technical training as well as provided. If you want to learn Agile, if you want to learn Scrum, if you want to get certification in any technical area from the software development perspective, there is an organization called Simply Learn. There are so many. There are so many different providers out there. Like I said, right? We are drowning in information, but we are starving for wisdom. There is so much information right there. But I would honestly like to, ask everybody, and this is very open-ended. I know I won't be able to get the answers, but how many of us are actually investing in our development and spending time learning or enrolling ourselves in these courses, right? Now, I know some of us are, but a lot of us aren't as well. And I really feel this is really important because the resources are out there. There's so many different tools available to learn, right? I mean, if you want a book, any book in the world, you go onto a site like PDF Online Drive, you can get it, right? If you wanna, get a slide deck on something, go to SlideShare and it's available. You have so much of information available, right? Now, how much do we actually use this information, right? Do we actually go in there and register for these courses, research? That this is where it starts. We can't wait for, a situation where we have to change and that's why we're going into this and changing. No, we have to adopt a really proactive approach. Because if we don't adopt a proactive approach, we might be left behind again. So my advice for everyone, again, and let me reiterate this, invest in your development. No one else is going to do this for you. You have to take responsibility over your career, whether you're a techie, whether you're in HR, whether you're in marketing. You need to be up to date. You need to find the resources. You need to actually learn and be able to translate all that learning into actionable results, right? Because so many people have really great ideas. They learn a lot of things. And, back in the day, they always said knowledge is power. But knowledge is not power. It is only potential power. If you are able to use that knowledge into delivering results, that's where it becomes power, right? So are you able to, find these resources, register for these courses, learn something from it, and then take that information and use it for your benefit to execute and create results for your organization and for yourself. If you can do that, great. You have an amazing future. But you need to follow this sequence in order for you to be effective. And I think that's personally as well as professionally, this is something you need to invest in. And the more, and this is something I learned from my personal experience. The more you invest in your personal development, you will see your entire life, from your professional life to your personal life to your sporting, excursions, everything will improve. But you need to take that first step and invest in your development, right? And when you think about it, guys, right, from the richest person in the world to the poorest person in the world, we all have the same 24 hours. This is one thing that all of us have in common. It depends on what are your habits and your rituals that you have set for yourself, right? Are you watching 3 hours of Netflix every night? Or, do you spend at least 1 hour of that reading, right? Can you substitute the habits that are not adding value to yourself with habits that are actually adding value to your life? So these are things that you need to really, deep dive and ask yourself, what do I really want out of life? And have I committed my habits and have I committed my rituals to ensure that I get the most out of, what I'm looking for? So yeah, I know I went a bit roundabout, Chatushka, but I hope I answered your question in that sense.
Absolutely. That was great insight that you shared, Mas. I think it's about adapting to a proactive approach, like you rightly mentioned. My next question, Mas, is related to we've seen a trend where technical resources, they have that competency, they have that confidence in terms of their back-end skills. How important is it for technical resources to build up soft skills as well and to be a focal point when it comes to facing the customer, skills such as presentations, such as communications? Do you reckon that would place them at a particular advantage? Is my next question.
That's another really great question. So this is the thing, right? We currently work in a global village. We're not bound by boundaries and borders, right? We work with customers all over the world. And although we may, some of us may seek certain careers where we are in the back end, we're programmers and developers, we don't really interact as much with the customers. Again, we need to ask ourselves a very important question. Do we really want to grow in the corporate ladder? And do we actually want to make progress in our own careers? If you are a software developer and you are in the back end, you're doing an amazing job. Do you one day want to become an architect, or do you want to become, a consultant, right? Where you use that to actually consult other companies. And if your answer is yes, and if you actually want to progress in those careers, you would understand that, yes, your technical knowledge is very important, but these other skills are also really essential as you take your product or your service to global markets. Can you make a presentation to teams in Europe and the US and in Australia and the Middle East? Are you able to do that? Are you able to troubleshoot? Are you able to engage with different people, different cultures? Do you understand different cultures, right? Do you know that, people in Europe may not want to be called on weekends, whereas, in other countries in the subcontinent, it's okay to give someone a call after 5 o'clock. So there's so many different things that you need to understand if you're working in a global environment. You need to be empathetic. You need to understand how different people work, how to make presentations, how to brand yourself. There are so many things that need to come into play. And if you say, yes, I only want to be a techie in the back end, I don't really want to make progress and become an architect and front the customers and all that, then that's fine. I mean, that's something that you have decided, right? But if you want to make progress and if you actually want to make it big, these are some things that, will actually be important because otherwise you're going to have a ceiling which you're not going to be able to break. Because a lot of people, I've seen, saying, listen, I back myself technically. I am an expert. I'm really good. And this is sufficient for now. Yeah, it is sufficient for now. I have no doubt. But if you are going to take it to the next level, right, you have to manage teams. Do you have the ability to lead teams? Technically, yes, as an individual, I'm brilliant. But when you get a promotion and now you're a team lead, it's no longer about me. It's about my team. I don't need to perform technically. My team needs to perform. Can I get the right, the flavor of the team? Can I build a culture? Can I build competence? This is what I need to get from the team. So while it is important to have the technical ability, it's also really important to develop all these other ancillary skills because we're working in a global environment, right? And I think, that is elementary. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And if we are not good in these areas, we can't say, listen, I'm not good in it. I believe that talent alone is not enough. You also, if you're not good in presentation skills, work on it. Join a Toastmasters Club, start reading, do whatever it takes to become a better presenter. If you're really not good at, another leadership, well, leaders can be made, right? Why don't you start putting yourself in difficult positions, in leadership positions, so that you build that capability, right? So these things can be developed. So that is my message for everyone, Chatushka. Invest in your personal development as well, because they go hand in hand. One is not more important than the other, but both are important. So yeah, that is my take on that question. I hope that made sense.
Yes, absolutely. That was a very informative and holistic perspective that you shared. I'm sure the audience tuned in would certainly value your response. So before we go into the next question, there is one more commercial that will be played, and then we'll continue with the discussion alongside.
Hi, I'm Nadeep Jayathilaku, a past student of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia, currently following the NCC UK Foundation Program for Software Engineering here at UCL. I found out about UCL after going through the internet, looking for universities that I could apply for with my current O-level results, and I found that UCL had the best options for me when it came to my career path and the time I spent obtaining my degree. The positive reviews left by family and friends about the overall atmosphere at UCL and the amount of lecturer support we get really sealed the deal for me, and therefore I decided UCL it is. The main reason I decided to go for a foundation course over finishing my A-levels is because I believed that it would be an opportunity for me to kickstart my higher education and obtain my degree all before the age of 21. I now wish to invite anyone who wants to kickstart their higher education by either joining the foundation program or jumping straight into the degree program if you have completed your A-levels. Thank you.
That was another commercial from our sponsor for today's discussion, for today's series, UCL. So coming back to conversation, Mars, I know you've shared a lot of insight, a lot of information related to the careers in the new normal. We see a trend, Mars, it could be the current generation, Gen Z, or even millennials, where there is an expectation for where they pursue instant gratification. They might look at switching jobs too early because of a particular promotion or because of merely a remuneration increase. Could you elaborate on the importance of building a career and experience, and also your perspective in terms of what is evident with with the current generation?
Sure, Chatushka. So I think you touched upon a very important word there, or phrase rather, instant gratification. So currently we live in a world where everything is available for us instantly, right? If you want a relationship, you go on Tinder, you swipe right, bang, you have a relationship. If you, want to binge a television series, you go into Netflix and, you watch everything overnight. Back in the day, we had to wait one whole week until we had the next episode of a series coming up, right? And it was quite tedious and quite, we had to wait for it. But, that sort of built a certain mindset as well. But right now, everything is available immediately, right? And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, because technology has evolved quite fast, it has been able to, provide this luxury to a lot of people. Now, what happens is, unfortunately, on the flip side of it, when undergraduates or anyone enters the workforce, they also expect very fast results. They join, they expect promotions year on year, they expect to get, that exposure immediately. And I think that's fair because that's the way, life has sort of, been for a lot of people, because everything that you want, you can get, in a heartbeat. But it's a little different when you start working because, you don't get promoted every year. You're working on a performance-based culture. You are not entitled for anything, right? You will only get something if you perform. Experience is valued very highly. And why is this? Because only if you spend a number of years doing a job, right? And you can be an expert in your subject area, but only when you spend a number of years doing a particular role, you will encounter so many different situations that you will exactly know what you need to do, right? For example, I mean, Usain Bolt, fastest man in the world, right? He runs the 100 meters in 9 seconds, right? But it took him about 20 years for him to even do that. Why? Because there's a process, you need to go through that process. And we see a lot of people entering the workforce who are not ready to invest in that process. I haven't got my increment this year. I haven't got my promotion. I haven't made an impact, even though I've been here for 3 months. Well, that won't happen every time, I mean, yes, there are certain success stories and we're looking at people who have done it, but not everyone gets to do that. You need to invest in that process. And it's a long, drawn out process sometimes, right? You don't see results immediately. It takes a lot of time sometimes for you to get to where you want to be. But if you give up on that process and you keep switching jobs for more money, or you keep looking for new careers in different areas, you keep leapfrogging and jumping, but eventually you're going to hit a ceiling where you really can't progress any further from that. And let me give you a very simple example. So if you heard the story about the Chinese bamboo tree, right, where in the first year you plant it and you water it, nothing happens. Second year you do the same, nothing happens. Third year you expect something to sprout out, nothing happens. Fourth year you're now frustrated and you want something to happen, nothing happens. And now you're ready to give up. And in the fifth year, that tree grows to about 90 feet, in a couple of months. But at any given point, if you stop watering it and you stop fertilizing it, it would have never grown, and it would have never reached that height that it did in the fifth year. And that's very similar to your career as well. You need to invest in that process. You need to understand why that is so important, because all your transformation happens during that process. Yes, you might want to jump to a job with higher money, higher pay, maybe switch careers here and there. But in the long run, you will hit a stumbling block. You will hit the ceiling where you will not be able to progress any further, right? Have a plan for yourself. If you want to become the best software engineer in the world, that should be a greater plan. And you need to invest in the process to go there. Don't give up on your goal if it doesn't pay you, in the first year or the second year, right? Don't switch careers saying, listen, it didn't pay me what I expected to get paid. Your ambition and your why is to become the best software engineer in the world. And you need to invest in that process. You need to go through the hardships, the challenges. You need to be resilient. And only when you get that experience will you be rewarded for it. But unfortunately, like you mentioned, Chatushka, we live in a world where everything is immediate. And we are entitled, right? When we were in school, we got certificates for participating, right? So we were made to feel special. And when we enter the workforce, we want to feel special. So if somebody doesn't give us a pat on the back, we feel, that we are useless. And I recently looked at a survey, right? And it said the most people who are most depressed and under stress weren't, in the age of in their 30s, but they were between 19 and 23. And why is that? It's because a lot of kids have so many expectations that they have for themselves. And when they feel they're not able to achieve these things at that age, they feel very upset and disappointed. They look at people who have amazing Instagram lives and they want the same. But you don't get paid, in the first year when you start working. You don't get that. You need to invest in that process. And everybody has a different timeline. You might hit goal when you're 35. Some might hit goal when they're 25, but that's their timeline. So you need to invest and recognize that process, because that is where greatest transformation happens for you. So yeah, I could go much further, but this is just a gist of what I wanted to share. So I hope that really helps, and I hope that made sense.
That was a very captivating response. Thank you again. That was, I believe that's the hard truth that you shared with the audience. Thank you again for being very open and honest. So taking a different perspective, or taking into consideration sports and extracurricular activities, we know, Mas, that you're enthusiastic in terms of sports. If you could elaborate in terms of how important sports and extracurricular activities would play in terms of personal as well as professional development. You reckon there is an advantage that a student would have when they enter the workforce if they are, all-rounded, not just focusing on the academic aspect, but has a background in terms of sports, extracurricular activities, has been involved in terms of volunteering for projects? What would your take be on that?
Right. So let me give you a typical example. So when we go, in for career fairs, right? We go to, any university and we run a career day. Now, the last thing that we're going to be looking at is your degree. Why? Because, you were going to a particular university and it's a career day, and we expect everybody to have the same degree, right? That's a no-brainer, right? When you're going to, UCL and everybody has the same degree. That's granted, right? But what we're looking at is what else can you bring to the table? And these are things that we sort of try and comb out. What else can you bring to the table? Can you work with teams? Can you fit into our culture? And this is what you can grow by having extracurricular sort of commitments. Were you a member of a sports team? Were you a member of a club or a society? If somebody comes and tells me, listen, my presentation skills aren't really great. I really want to improve on my communication skills, but I have joined a Toastmasters club, then we would take that person. You know why? Because this person recognizes that they have an area they have to improve on, and they're doing something about it. No one's forcing them to join a Toastmasters club. They're doing it because they want to develop themselves. And this is something that we're looking for, someone who takes the initiative. So while it's great to be, while it's great to focus a lot of your time and your effort on your grades and completing your degree, I have no doubt that anyone who starts on a degree program at the end of 4 years will complete it, right? They will do it somehow. But what a lot of people lack is, what else can you bring to the table? Do you, get yourself involved in internships, right? Have you even worked at McDonald's or KFC? I mean, that is work experience in itself, right? Are you able to do different things? And this shows, a different side to your character. How do you brand yourself? How do you purposefully brand yourself even on social media? At an interview, which is only about 15 or 20 minutes, there's so much we can gauge from just speaking to you, right? But what we would like to see either on your CV or even in your social media is, what are you all about? What do you represent? What are your values? What are you strong? What do you really value in terms of your, of what you want to do in life? Because, you are not only defined by your professional life, you're defined by everything else you do as well, right? And I think somebody, this famous basketball player, LeBron James, right, who's probably one of the best basketball players, maybe next to Michael Jordan, they asked him, you are a god when it comes to basketball. He said, don't define me by my basketball. Define me on the impact I make to this world, right? So while it's great to be competent in your professional, in your technical ability, also invest on all these other things as well, because companies are looking for that. If you can't work with our team, then you're not good to me. If you can't, make presentations, and if you don't have those soft skills, how can I put you in front of a customer? So these are things that are really valued. And for the longest time, right, even when it comes to teamwork, right, we always look for the team player. And this is my personal experience, right? We always, as companies and employees, we look for someone who can work in a team, which is really important, right? Because if you worked in a team, you can come and work in our team. But we are also looking for that resilience and that endurance mindset. And even if you've done an individual sport, that is also important. And you know why? Because when you do an individual sport, maybe swimming or tennis or running, you don't have your team members, waking you up early morning saying, listen, are you ready for a run? Or are you meeting me in the pool? These are things that you have to self-motivate you and do it for yourself. When you're running, 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers, you can give up at any point. The only person who will know about it is yourself, right? And if you stay true to the commitment you make to yourself and complete that 15 kilometers, you do that swim in the morning where you wake up at 5 o'clock, that builds endurance, that builds a resilient mindset. And not only in sport, we will see that, if you are faced with any challenge that comes in work, you will be able to overcome it because you have that endurance mindset. And that is so important. Because if we are looking for that person who's always succeeded in life and we take that person into our organization, what happens when you fail? What happens when there are challenges? Will you be able to pick yourself off the mat? If you pass in every single thing in your life, you have no experience in failing. And we don't want people like that as well. We want people who can fail and emerge better the next year. People who have a bad year, and you're entitled to have a bad year. Maybe this year you didn't get a promotion, you didn't get an increment, but next year you will be better. And that is what you call being resilient. So these are things we're looking for, Chatushka, in terms of, the other skill set apart from your technical ability.
Again, a very inspirational perspective that you shared there, Mass. So I think we've wrapped up majority of the questions that were that were asked, and you've responded holistically. And I'm sure there has been a great value proposition given to the audience as well. So let's just get to know yourself better. I mean, your personality. So I just like to throw a few rapid fire questions just to get to know who Mass is on a personal level. So if I may ask, describe yourself in 3 words. What would you say?
Um, making a positive, well, 4 words, making a positive impact. So, so for me, right, like for those of you all who read the book by Simon Sinek, Finding Your Why, right? For me, my purpose of what I do is making an impact to people around me, and everything else that sort of flows from that is based on that objective of creating a positive impact. So whether it's work or my sports or being here this evening, it's to create a positive impact, right? And anything that is there in my life, or if there's any proposition that comes along, I filter it as per what is my purpose, right? And if it's not within that scope, I don't really engage in it. So yeah.
Thanks, Mas. I know there are restrictions in terms of travel that have already been in place. But if I may ask, considering your past travel experiences, any particular travel destination that you could pin down as favorite, and if I may ask, why as well? And also, if you would like to share any sort of travel-related tips, that is
Sure.
also.
Sure. So I'm a World War II freak, right? I read about a lot about World War II, and I love going through all the manuals, the Band of Brothers, watching those series. And for me, Europe is really is one of my favorite destinations, because whenever I'm in Europe, either for work, I take a half a day off and I go and visit a concentration camp, or I go and or I go and see some war memorials. Everything that I've watched in movies, from Finding Private Ryan to Band of Brothers, to all these different things. I'm a sort of World War II freak and a historian. I like history as well, so I like to spend a lot of time in Europe, because there's so much of history that I have actually learned about in school, which I go exploring. So that's my favorite destination.
Great, Mas. Interesting. So last but not least, again, thank you, for coming on board and sharing so much information, insight. It has been a great value proposition to the audience that has tuned in, no doubt. So if I may ask, in terms of, you've shared a lot of wisdom in the areas of let's say persistence, in the areas of being determined, taking into consideration ownership. Any particular final advice that you would like to share in conclusion to the audience that has tuned in?
Sure. So the only advice I can give everybody, and I think everything that I spoke this evening resonated with it, is take responsibility. If it's leadership, if it's your career, anything in your life, the moment you take responsibilities, where your life will change. It's very easy to blame everything and everyone around us for the circumstances we find ourselves in, right? But what happens is we don't move forward. The moment you take responsibility, your life will change. Right? So you may think life is unfair, people don't recognize you, and that's fair enough. But you can either stop like a deer in the headlights and wait for the storm to blow over, which it may not happen, or take responsibility and say, listen, I need to get myself out of this situation. Right? So guys, I think that's very applicable in whatever career or whatever stage you are in your life. Take responsibility and see your life change. And that is my advice.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mas, for tuning in, and thank you for sharing so much of insight. I mean, we really value you coming on board, and it was an absolute privilege hosting you. On behalf of Chocolate, we would like to wish you all the very best in corporate and personal endeavors.
Thank you so much, Atushka, and thank you, Chocolate, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm really humbled to be here. Thank you so much. To the audience, stay blessed and keep developing yourself, right? If we are not growing, we are dying. So make sure that you grow as people. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mas, and also for the viewers that tuned in. There is a series of interesting Instagram live sessions, webinars lined up by Chocolate. So stay tuned. These will be live streamed through our Instagram as well as Facebook page. So stay tuned and stay tuned for the updates. I'm Shatush Kadiavis signing off from Chocolate. Have a great rest of the day. God bless you all.